Hello, welcome to episode 4 of AL Vibe Coding, where we vibe all of the things. And today we're going to try to vibe all of the wireframes. And let me just check on audio here. Sounds good. Okay, so let's get started. So, as you've seen in prior journeys, we can vibe code all we want. We can do some pretty amazing and crazy things, from vibing AL code to vibing documents, statements of work, PRDs, you name it. But a while back, as I've mentioned in prior journeys, I discovered wireframes. So this is something I've done for a few projects, not all the projects, because it's fairly time consuming and tedious to mock up a UI and figure out where buttons go and what controls and what labels. So I often just don't include it. And that's kind of a tragedy because they're super valuable, as we'll see. So can we vibe code the wireframe? So this is something I did a couple weeks ago, Friday night, 10 o'clock. And I'm like, wait a minute. This would be kind of cool, but how do I do that? I didn't know. So I started poking around and I figured out a process that I think is pretty effective. So if you are not familiar with the concept or the term wireframes, these are simple, the term, this is from Perplexity, the term low fidelity diagrams that show the basic layout of a page with minimal visual styling. And the point is not to have this picture perfect, 100% accurate representation of, say, a Business Central page. The point is to just show the layout. Where is this field going to go? Where's this button going to go? How are we going to represent these actions in the action bar in the case of Business Central and AL? Do we have this button? Do we have this field? What do we call it? Where do we put it? Right? What does the setup page look like? So it's just a way to kind of give a base picture, a simple picture, so that people can see that and have a discussion. And it can be super valuable. And I believe it can be pretty impressive for, especially for a simple PT. When a customer sees that, they're like, wow, that's kind of cool. And even if they don't say that, I would be impressed after a 30-minute phone call having a proposal with wireframes in it. I think that's just kind of classy. So they act as a blueprint for an application, helping teams decide what goes where and how users will move through the interface before any real UI design or coding begins. And one of the concepts is, if you can produce a wireframe and a customer, a consultant, or a colleague or someone can say, hey, instead of having this field all the way down here at the bottom of the page, that's kind of important. Every time we open this page, it's going to be modified. Let's put it at the top. So why not have that discussion up front before your poor developer puts a field randomly somewhere and has to move it and you have to have a new release? Okay, so I did a little Google search for this and I came across Figma. And if you're not familiar with Figma, it is one of these kind of blended design project management SaaS applications website that many people pay a lot of money for. And it helps you with UX design and product design, where teams can collaborate on this website. Well, rather than paying for Figma now, can we just vibe code these things? And what was interesting about the definition that I grabbed versus the Figma discussion I kind of like is Figma mentions you can have low fidelity wireframes, which you can, super simple, black and white, just kind of squares and labels. They mention mid-fidelity wireframes that help designers iterate and progress with a final design, and then high-fidelity wireframes that look like the product mock-up or your final product once you have a design style, whatever that might be called, branding, etc. Well, we're kind of lucky in that as AL developers, we're not really having to craft a design from scratch. We have a design framework. So we can just jump to high fidelity. I think, because we don't need to go from low, mid to high fidelity. If you have an established design system, just explore the design at a higher fidelity from the beginning. And what's extra nice about vibe coding the wireframes, guess what? We say, hey, copy the Business Central design pattern, look and feel, style, and we don't really care. It's not really a big deal. You can go low fidelity, but as we'll experiment today, you can go high fidelity. So Tar says, Figma has introduced MCP server and client, so you can use design with an agent. Interesting. Now, I've always been kind of cheap and kind of lazy, and I've never really needed all the 97 features of Figma and Notion and all these other applications. But I would argue that much of this, now, if you need to collaborate, maybe there's a case for applications like Figma, but for most of my stuff, customer just wants a statement of work, and that's awesome. Let's go start vibe coding, right? Okay, so let's check this out, and let's see if we can vibe code wireframes. Okay, so let's hop over to channel 4. Okay, so here we are with VS Code. I have a simple AL app started, did AL Go, and really there's nothing in here. We're not going to actually code here, but I'm using VS Code and GitHub Copilot just as a proxy for what you can do no matter what tool you use. Cursor, Claude, whatever you want to use for this particular task. It doesn't even need to have AL extensions really, although I suspect it helps to give it some context. Let's find out. Okay, so I have this fake statement of work, and it's really huge on my monitor, just to make sure it comes across on screen. And so I had this statement of work that I called the Customer Class ID Statement of Work, version 1. This Business Central PTE will provide a custom class ID feature for customers. A user will be able to assign a class ID values to each customer record. And this is totally made up. This is just a feature from Dynamics GP that doesn't exist in Business Central. And so it's just an easy way to get a hypothetical custom field on the customer card. So we have this statement of work, and we say, okay, we want a class ID feature and hypothetical customer class setup page, and it'll have a toggle to enable or disable this feature. And then we have class ID and description in some type of list part, whatever we call it. I forget the exact name. Let's see if this works. A list part subpage, not sure. Depends on how it's implemented. We'll have class IDs and we'll have descriptions. And then on the customer card, we're going to have a page extension that adds a drop-down field listing the class ID values that were defined. It's just hypothetical, just so we can practice wireframing. Okay, so I'm going to come over to my agent chat here, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm wondering whether we should include the statement of work for context. Let's give it a try. Now, what I have done is generated a prompt, and this will just be a test prompt to start, and we'll explore other options for doing this. Generate an SVG wireframe of the Business Central customer card page with a custom drop-down field called Class ID in the general section. Very much what I described in the statement of work. The Class ID field should display the following values in the drop-down list: Class A, Class B, Class C, just keeping it simple. Save the SVG to the wireframes folder and name the file customer wireframe.svg. Now, let's just start with this and see what it comes up with. And I'm going to choose, let's just choose Claude Sonnet 4.5. And what I'm going to do is we're going to combine a couple things. I'm going to kind of jump ahead, and I'm going to say Sonnet 4.5 SVG in the file name. Why might I do this? Let's find out. So I'm going to paste this prompt in here, and I'm going to hit enter. YOLO. And it says, okay, cool. I'll create an SVG wireframe of the customer card page with a class ID dropdown. Awesome. And you're going to sit back, you're going to have a sip of coffee while your agent does the work. That's the whole point of vibe coding, right? Now, I do not have an instructions file. I do not have an agents file. I do not have an MCP server. I don't have any of these things. We're just vibe coding, keeping it super simple. Anyone can do this in under 5 minutes. So it says, great, I've created this wireframe. So it says you can open the SVG. So I'm going to open it in File Explorer just so that I can open it in a browser. So we're going to go to Wireframes, and there's our customer wireframe Sonnet 4.5. Okay. So look at that. Obviously, we have a little bit of rendering issue, but kind of cool. We have our customer card. We have general. And we see class ID, class A, B, and C in a dropdown. And this is saying like custom class ID dropdown, but it's overlapping with contact. And that's some of the quirks that you can identify. So let's see if it can fix that. I haven't tried this yet, but just say, please modify the wireframe to move the class ID field as the last field in the second column. So let's see if it can do this. So I'm going to go over to Edge, close that. And why are we doing this as SVG? Well, because I tried to have it, at least in the current iteration, as of a couple weeks ago, I tried to have it generate an image, like a JPEG or a PNG. And at that time, it couldn't do it. So I said, aha, isn't there a text-based image format? And I didn't know it at the time, but that turned out to be SVG. I took a wild guess. It's like, yes, I can generate SVG, which is just text. It's rendered in a browser as an image. Now, it's not quite as convenient in some respects, but it's more convenient in others, such as this. It can just easily re-render it by modifying the text. So let's go back into File Explorer, and let's see what it looks like now. Look at that. Now, it has overlapped it again, but you get the point, right? So look at that. Pretty cool. So now we have a wireframe. So in seconds, if a customer, a functional consultant, product manager, your colleagues, whatever, it's like, hey, I want to add these fields. Just mock it up. Use a wireframe. Vibe code the wireframe. So now, while doing this, I thought, hey, all these people are saying, oh, you got to use this model because it's cooler. No, I use this model because it's better. Well, this is just one use case, is not the universal way to test, but let's do this. Let's do a new chat. Let's go back out of our chat. Well, first of all, let's keep our first wireframe, Sonnet 4.5. Let's go back and let's use the same prompt, but now let's do GPT 5.1 codecs. Okay, so we'll do GPT 5.1 codecs. Okay, and this is a brand new chat, and I'm going to include the SOW for context in case it matters, and I'm going to say generate wireframe 5.1 codecs. Let's see how they're different. And what's nice about this is if you use a particular model to generate a bunch of code, it's quite a hassle to compare against another model. It's like, well, are those really differences between the models? Is it just a randomness of running once versus a second time? Oh, enable access to 5.1. And so it's much harder to tell with code whether one is better than the other. It takes a lot more iterations to determine that. What's kind of interesting about wireframes is you can instantly look at the two pictures and say, oh, I like this one better. So you may it may be quicker for you to find a preference for models for AL wireframes in Business Central. Now, if you're doing JavaScript and whatever the tools are for website design, maybe you'll find a completely different model does a much better job than AL wireframes. But in my case, all I care about is AL wireframes. So I'm going to keep this new wireframe. Here's 5.1 codecs. Look at that. Really different output, right? I kind of like this. This has kind of got those rounded edge bubbles. Now, this is obviously not accurate in terms of Business Central. We don't have fast tabs along the left side. And navigate and actions, not the most high fidelity representation of Business Central. Visually, though, I kind of like it, right? It kind of gets the point across, easy on the eyes. This is probably a little more accurate, not great, but pretty good. Okay, cool. I'm having fun. So next up, let's just do GPT 5.2 since we're here. Okay, so we'll do GPT 5.2, change the file name, and I don't have Pro or Max. Let's see, can I enable Pro or Max? No, I just have 5.2 listed here. Okay, so let's just go with GPT 5.2. Let's copy this prompt. Let's add context and let's go. And I'm just going to do one more so we have around 4 samples that we can compare. It's hard work. Now what's interesting, look at that. I'll generate a new SVG in the same style as your existing customer wireframes. Now, is it cheating and peeking in our wireframes directory and using that? I didn't consider that. So what I wanted was just a completely independent, fresh wireframe, but 5.2 may be getting clever and cheating by peeking. And it's now asking, oh, do you want me to show collapsed or expanded? I don't know. Let's see what it created. Look at that. It looks identical. It is identical. Okay. Okay, so maybe I need to pull these out. And let's try that. So let's come out here and let's create a folder called samples or examples because I use samples elsewhere. Okay, so let's try this again. It felt like that was cheating. It's identical. What are the odds? So let's go back out. Let's do a new prompt. And we have our context. That was very interesting. Okay, so we're going to do GPT 5.2 again. And let's see. It says, I'm going to inspect the existing wireframes folder to match any established SVG style. So in this case, it was a con, but imagine if you already had SVGs that had a particular website style or application style. It's like, hey, I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to crib some notes there, Cliff Notes, and I'm just going to copy what you have. I'm not going to make you explain. That's pretty cool, pretty powerful. No wonder it was identical. So we had to remove the examples so that it didn't cheat in this test. Okay, so let's do a keep. Let's hop back. Let's go into our wireframes. Let's see what it came up with. Ooh, look at that. Completely different, right? Now, this would be kind of the minimalist wireframe. What did Figma call it? They called it low fidelity, okay? So this is the low fidelity wireframe. It's black and white. It's got some gray shading. That's kind of nice, but just straight to the point. No clutter, no colors, no nothing to really distract from the conversation. So is that good? Is that bad? You could obviously prompt it to include something else. Let's try one last one. Let's go back and now we know. Let's pull our 5.2 wireframe out and let's dump it in examples, replace the destination, and now let's do one more example, and this will be Opus 4.5. Okay, so Opus 4.5. Let's copy that prompt. Let's add our context and click go. So here we go. I need to create an SVG. Yes, you do. Now, interestingly, Opus did not attempt to read the wireframes. And that's fascinating about GPT 5.2. That kind of corresponds with what I've been reading. People have been raving about 5.2. They say codex, but I have been unable to find a 5.2 codex at the moment. I don't know if that's an OpenAI subscriber only, but 5.2 took the initiative to find additional context, which is 100% in line with what I've heard about it. Okay, so it created this. Let's hit keep and let's hop into our file explorer and let's go into our wireframes, Opus 4.5. Look at that. I have found that I personally kind of like the Opus 4.5 default style based on my tests. It has this Business Central header. It's got a little more context. It's just right out of the box. It's just visually, okay, cool. I like this. It's got a touch of color. It has the custom fields highlighted in yellow. It says custom. Like, I just really like it. It often has a legend at the bottom. It's got these other fast tabs represented. So it's like it understands Business Central better than the other models, which is really interesting. Like different training, different personality, I'm not sure. So that was a crash course in how to prompt for a wireframe. Very simple prompt, no context really needed. And then you get a really nice looking example that you can instantly screenshot and slap into a doc. Okay, so moving on quickly, let's proceed to a next step of being clever. So here I have my statement of work in Markdown format. So if someone gives you a statement of work, as I mentioned in the last journey, vibing all the docs, you can take a statement of work and convert it into a PRD. You can take base requirement documents, turn it into a functional design doc, whatever you want. You can vibe code the docs. So here's a trick that I've used to help with including the wireframes in my vibe coded docs. So I've got a sample statement of work MD that you saw before. I got a setup page and a customer card page extension. And you may have noticed that I have a tag here that says create wireframe. This isn't a special tag. This isn't a secret like Claude or GPT tag. It's just plain English, create wireframe. So let's give this a try. I have not practiced this, so let's see how this goes. So let's stick with Opus 4.5. Now, Opus 4.5 is more expensive overall. It's a very expensive model. It's more of a thinking model. In the case of Copilot, it's 3x. In the case of Cursor, I think it's even more expensive in terms of tokens that it'll burn. So you got to be careful with this. But for now, I don't use this enough to burn all my tokens. So let's give this a try. Let's go with Opus 4.5. And I'll say, now why does it say 15? Ah, is that number of tokens? Sonnet 4.5? Huh. Okay. Oh, line 15. Okay, got it. So I don't want just line 15. Let's switch back to Opus 4.5. I thought it was showing credits. But let's include the entire statement of work. And I'll say, please review this SOWV 1.0 markdown file and generate a PRD for this Business Central ALPTE. Okay. When you see the tag, and let's just copy this. When you see the tag create wireframe, generate an inline SVG image. And let's give it a name. So in the initial sentence, please review this SOW, generate a PRD for this document named, what are we going to call this? Customer class ID PRD v1.00 MD in markdown format, saved to the docs folder. Okay. When you see the tag create wireframe, generate an inline SVG image in the Markdown PRD. So I initially learned how to do this and had it save out SVG files, just like what we saw here. The hassle is if you have a separate SOW, requirements, PRD, you're having to deal with, well, do I embed the SVG in the Markdown file? Some Markdown rendering engines like VS Code do not render the SVG. I use Markdown Monster, which does. So it's a bit of a hassle, but since I use Markdown Monster and it can render HTML and SVG inline in a Markdown file, it's like, hey, why don't I just have it embed the SVG inline in my Markdown? So I'm going to finish with my famous AI close statement. Please let me know if you have any questions or need any clarification. Now, I don't really want it to ask me questions because this is a fake SOW, but we have chosen Claude Opus, and let's go. So it's going to create a PRD for me, and I'll create a comprehensive PRD. The word comprehensive always scares me with these things. As you know from the last journey, I used the word comprehensive and it generated a 520-page document. Way too much. Okay, 2 pages described in the SVG. Let me generate that now. And now we sit back while the agent does the work. Good question. Why don't you use Cursor? I did use Cursor. I started with Cursor. I previously loved Cursor. I think Cursor has a much better developer user experience. I think it wins based on my tests. However, for legal reasons, copyright reasons, licensing reasons, Cursor had to stop using the Microsoft Visual Studio Extension Marketplace. And as a result now, if you install Cursor and you want to use it, you want to do AL development or AL vibe coding, and you try to install the AL extension, you will not be able to find it. You'll search for AL, it won't be listed. And that is because Cursor now uses the OpenVSIX Marketplace, I believe it's called. And this is the non-Microsoft extension marketplace. So I was sitting there for 15 minutes trying to find this, and I thought I was going crazy until I understood what was going on. So I don't know if Microsoft is blocking this, if they're threatening this, or if Cursor's just being proactive and saying, we don't want a lawsuit. So Cursor's using OpenVSIX. You cannot find AL language extension there. You cannot find any of the AL, I believe, any of the AL developer helper tool extensions. You can export the VSIX from VS Code, then import it into Cursor, and you can use it. You can do AL vibe coding for now. I don't know how long that's going to last. So that's the downside. So that's why all my demos are in VS Code with GitHub Copilot, just because anyone who watches this can then go to the standard marketplace and get the extensions. I would prefer to use Cursor though. And now I'm seeing that even Claude Code, everyone's raving about Claude Code and how it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Is it worth the hassle to try and fight with the extensions and use another IDE? I don't know. I think we're 90% of the way there with VS Code. Is it as nice? I don't think so. Is it worth the hassle? Probably not. So I'm going to click on Keep because it says it created our PRD. So let's go up here. Let's go to our docs directory. There's our SRW. There's our PRD. And you see this is my Markdown Monster icon. You don't need to use Markdown Monster, but I found it's pretty darn powerful based on the few that I've compared. So here is our PRD. So let's just full screen this. Product requirement documents, executive summary, blah, 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 business need. We don't care about this. We're just reading through to get to the pretty pictures. Look at that. Wireframe, inline, embedded. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to ask for it. Enable customer class ID values. Look at that. Add new class ID, example values, page extension, blah, 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 whatever. I want the pretty pictures. look at that customer card. We've got these wannabe action buttons up here, and we've got the general section, and we've got our custom class ID field. And notice it rendered it completely differently from our first attempt. So over here, this is what we got. We had a more complete customer card. Huh, that's interesting, right? So trial and error. And if you prefer a certain style, just give it a hint. Say, hey, I want this style. I want dashes around the class ID. Or as we saw with GPT 5.2, which I just discovered, it will cheat and it will look in the directory at other samples. So if you have this sample in here, you could say, hey, refer to this sample wireframe as a style guideline for creating a high fidelity wireframe. How cool is that? So now, rather than having this boring blah, blah, blah PRD, you can have these jazzy looking fancy wireframes. And from experience, people are going to just page through and they're just going to stare at this, say, oh, okay, yeah, that looks good. Go ahead, develop, right? I love it. So look at how professional, and it looks like you spent hours on this document. We've spent me blabbing for 30 minutes. Like this took 5 minutes. So really just step up your game. And look at this. It did a user interface flow for me. Just deliver this. Glance at it, make sure it's right. Doesn't have any crazy stuff in here. Look at this. Initial PRD created, document history. I mean, this is an amazing way to step up your game, vibe your docs, vibe your wireframes, and deliver this next day. Have a conversation with the customer, internal team, manager, whoever you're working with, colleagues, vibe code, a PRD, deliver with embedded wireframes, and then you just relax and hopefully it gets accepted. Okay, so what else did I want to look at? I mean, we vibe coded the wireframes. Let's just jump back to channel 3. We might be done, but oh, one more thing I'd like to try. Okay, so this is a bonus round. So what I did in advance was I took some screenshots of Business Central. And depending on the output of those sample wireframes, I'm like, can we get a higher fidelity wireframe? So let's do this. Let's go back to our prior session. So VS Code finally updated this feature to compete with Cursor, and you can click on the back button and you can see your prior chats in this workspace or this project. So that was my PRD. This was an SVG using Claude Opus. And so now let's do this. I'm going to paste in that image. So what I did was I took this screenshot of the Business Central customer card page, Control C to copy. I pasted it in to the chat with Copilot. I'm referencing my MD, and I'm going to say, let's do this. I'm going to say, please reference the attached image of the Business Central customer card page and make a new higher fidelity wireframe of that includes the custom class ID field. I guess I should high fidelity wireframe of the customized, lots of customs, customize, come on, customer card page that includes, okay. And anything else? Yes, name the new SVG file. Let's call it V2. So let's see if we can paste in an image of Business Central in order to improve the fidelity, as they say, make a higher fidelity wireframe. This will be kind of cool. Okay, I need to add it somewhere in the general section, make it look authentic to BC. Cheers. And it's thinking, this is hard work, right? So it's funny, now that I can vibe code stuff, I get impatient when a model takes 30 to 60 seconds. Like, I have to now fill the time in my live streams while it's doing work. But let's see how it goes. So I suppose this is a bigger request because it does have the image. It's going to have to review that image. It's going to have to interpret it, and then it's going to have to render the new one. But let's see. This was Opus 4.5 version 1, which I thought was pretty fancy. And this was our other version down here, which is okay. So the new wireframe closely matches the actual Business Central. Ooh, look at that teal header bar. Very cool. Look at that. Let's keep it. I am very eager. Let's see. What do we got here? Wireframes, Opus 4.5 V. Look at that. Now, it's a little cluttered, right? It's kind of stepping over itself. But if you want high fidelity, like you could exclude these fast tabs from your screenshot. Look at that. It now has the color. It's now even, look at that. How did it do little icons? Oops. Look at that. It's got the pencil, the plus, the garbage can, the save, show less, the fact box. Impressive. With a little cleanup, this could be like a 95% functionality. How cool is that? So now we know we can save this in a samples folder, and you could tell the model, say, hey, check this out. Use this as your reference. Just don't step on my fields. Let's make that a little bigger so you can see it on screen. Okay, I'm impressed. I'm just blown away by this, and I think this is amazing, right? And this is just something I stumbled on, thinking about it on a Friday night, literally 10 o'clock, trying to send out a proposal to a partner, saying, hey, what about this? So this is just super powerful, and in minutes, you can produce some amazing documents to deliver just that are much more professional. Okay, enough blathering. Let's go back to channel 3. So let me clean this up. Okay, so what did we learn? Vibe-coded SVG wireframes. Number one, absolutely possible. You saw how easy it was. It's text. You can just copy and paste that text. You can paste it in a markdown file. You can open it in a browser. You can screenshot it from there and get a JPEG or a PNG. Awesome. Super high value. It looks like you spent hours doing this, right? Looks like you know what you're doing. You know how to vibe code. Hey. Design discussions, requirements, proposals, statement of work, PRDs, you name it, as early as possible. You say, oh, you want a custom field? Sure. How does this look? Would this work? Maybe it's more complex. The more complex, the better, the more value a wireframe might provide. As we saw, you can use wireframes to quickly compare models. Not that it's valuable. Comparing models for wireframes is different than comparing them for AL development or node development, but it was interesting. We saw how dramatically different those are, and we learned that the models can easily scan an existing SVG or even a JPEG screenshot, and it can mimic it pretty closely. So now that I know this, it doesn't really matter what model I use. I don't need to use a particular model just for wireframes. I just say, use this style of this wireframe that I already have for you, both a screenshot and sample SVG. And I'd probably want to clean this up a little, but I kind of like the little dashed thingy. So I like this class ID that has the yellow dash and it says custom. That's kind of nice. It shows you explicitly. I kind of like the legend. So depending on what you're displaying, the legend helps explain what's going on. I like this wireframe, customer card with class ID, page extension V2. Like, it's just so smart, so refined. And include wireframe placeholders in your requirement documents. SOWs, PRDs, and when you have the agent work on those, you just have it generate the inline SVG in your Markdown, assuming you have a rendering engine that can do inline HTML and SVG in your Markdowns. And I just said inline SVG wireframes when you vibe code your docs. So that's an example of a customer class ID in my mock-up statement of work in a Word document. So any questions, any ideas? Like, just go crazy with this stuff. Like, all these little unexpected, it's gold. It's just laying right in front of us. All we need to do is get kind of creative and figure out how to use these insane tools. And I am just going to be vibe coding all the documents, wireframing all the things. I sent a requirements doc to my partner Tanya with a bunch of sample wireframes, mock-ups of what these pages would look like. So hope that was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it, and go and vibe code. Okay. Cheers.